The main thing, for me with deal sourcing is a lot of people are, constantly looking for, I think, a magic sort of website or, this sort of like amazing tip that's just going to unlock a lot of deals. But I think really it's something that you've just got to work at over and over again, and constantly building trust and relationships with people seems to be the way that it's worked for me and everybody else that I've kind of coached along the way. Is just, you've probably got a lot of deals sat within your phone book, which we'll come on to. But in the main, deals are built through relationships, and ultimately landlords have got to trust you with their property. A lot of landlords have either saved up for a very long time to buy, one or two buy-to-lets, done it as kind of the old-fashioned way of just chucking in 25% deposits, or it could be a inherited property, potentially, from someone passing away or whatever. So they're normally quite emotionally connected to properties, and we've got to make them want to trust us to be able to look after it, because our industry naturally comes with a stigma of things getting trashed. So, that's one of the first hurdles that a lot of people do instantly put their backs up with, although I've got many stories of tenants trashing properties as well to counteract them. But in the main, we kind of got to always focus on this trust and relationship building. So, as I said, you've got to be kind of constantly working on this strategy. So, it doesn't just happen overnight, and it's something that whether you're targeting landlords, whether you're targeting estate agents, friends, family, whoever it might be, you've got to constantly be building the trust and, showing them and demonstrating to them how they can rely on you to look after their property, how they can rely on you to get paid every single month. That they're the kind of things that they want to know, and you've got to be able to demonstrate the trust. Now, for me, social proof's probably a good way to do it, and you always hear this probably if you go on any kind of property training course. One of the first things they'll tell you is to document your journey on social media, and that's not to show off. It's not to sort of be, showy off or whatever. It's just, for me, it's kind of just ticking those trust boxes. So, the more you put online, it's, whether it's just out viewing properties or whether it's, meeting, investors or whatever it might look like, going into estate agents, walking the streets, things like that, then it just shows that, you're in the property game, you are doing what you say you're doing. Because especially when you're speaking with landlords direct, I guarantee you when you finish the viewing with them, if you don't already know them, they'll jump on your social media profiles and they'll have a quick nosy around and just kind of see, who you are and what you're up to. And that's why I think it's really important to just kind of, be chucking social proof out there all the time. So when you get a property, get it on your social medias. Once you've, kitted it out and furnished it and made it look amazing, again, put it on the social media, and just kind of, it's almost like building a sort of like a workbook of all of your work, but just on a social media profile. And I think your personal profiles are the best thing. I'm not a big fan of Facebook pages. I think you're better off just putting them on your personal stuff and just documenting your journey. The growth marketing element is something that you'll do once you get going, and you might already have properties in stock in a different way, and you can use that to your advantage to get going. But growth marketing is effectively any kind of success that you and your company is having. So I do think it can be done in a way that's not like always, hey, look at me, look how great I am. It just kind of, whether it's, you're on board another property, or whether it's, you've got a great guest review, or, just shows that your company is growing. And I think that growth marketing kind of directly links into the sort of journey and the social proof, which again, just constantly gives back these sort of trust signals that, they know what they're doing. Okay, fair enough. I can see they've got, other properties from other landlords, therefore, they can be trusted. And it just, everything we're doing is just kind of ticking these little trust boxes each and every day, and each part of the journey to just try and help our conversion rate. So what you find is when you start going on viewings and you start securing some properties, you know, your first few are always the hardest to get, but then after that, it really just starts to snowball because of, you know, this whole trust thing. People just start to refer you, people like it. You'll tend to work with, you know, if you find a portfolio landlord, they're the best, because once they've done one or two with you and seen how easy it is and how, you know, how you pay them and how you look after the properties, they just constantly give you more and more of their portfolio. So, you know, if you come across one of them, you know, fantastic. And you will do as well as your journey goes on. You will come across portfolio landlords who just want to work with you. But yeah, be demonstrating growth within yourself and your companies, you know, even things like this, where you're, you know, educating yourself on how to become, you know, a better operative in this industry. You know, take pictures of it, document your journey, you know, shout about it. And it's just showing, it's proof that, you know, you're educating yourself and, you know, you're getting going. It's funny. I seen someone put in, I think it was the Property Northeast group today, like, I'm going to be a deal sourcer and I'm going to charge investors money, and will someone teach me how to do it? And it's like, I get that everyone's got to learn how to do something, but, you know, you can't be charging people if you don't know how to actually put a deal together. You know, you've got to learn that bit first, and then you've got to find a deal, and then you've got to make sure it stacks and make sure that, you know, it's going to work for the investor. There's a lot more, you know, I just saw that post and instantly thought, like, who on earth is going to work with you? You've admitted you know nothing and that you need help, yet you're trying to pitch to investors to buy deals off you. It just didn't make sense to me. So, you know, always just be thinking about how you're presenting yourself online. And I think social media now is, you know, Facebook's, Instagram. There's a part in the program, I think it's setting up your business is one of the modules, and it goes through the kind of individual channels, albeit it was probably shot a couple of years ago. I still think it rings true that, you know, they're just, for me, social media accounts are almost just like an extension of a website. Like, my personal profile is just like a mini website. My, you know, Facebook pages or Instagram pages, they're just extensions of a website. You know, I don't really post any personal stuff on there. If at all, it's pretty much just business, because I think that's where social media is now. And I think TikTok's even gone that way as well. So whilst, you know, I kind of, a few years ago, spotted TikTok as a bit of a trending channel for business. I think when everyone was making dance videos, everyone was asking me why I was doing videos on it. But as it is become now, it's very much become like an educational and a selling platform. And you're seeing more and more businesses go on there. And we get a lot of lead flow from that as well. So you can also attract attention on various different channels as long as it's done in the right way. But I'm very much a fan of, you know, creating content rather than consuming content. I think social media, as it was designed and as the majority of people use it, is fundamentally flawed, because you just waste time. But if we use it for our advantage to promote our businesses and what we're doing and our service levels, our trust signals, brand marketing, things like that, then you will start to get inbound lead flow from that posting activity. Accreditations are, again, kind of build into that trust element. So once you get going, you definitely want to, you know, get yourself a website, and you want to get yourself IPRAC accredited. It just sort of stamps that, you know, you're a global certified operator, you've been checked out. And there's other things as well, you know, if you ever win awards for anything, or, you know, that sort of stuff, you just want to get that on your websites or on your social media platforms. And again, it's just adding in those elements that you can be trusted to look after someone's property. You can be trusted by estate agents to, you know, pay the bills. You know, the last thing an estate agent wants to do is introduce a landlord that they've maybe had on their books for quite some time, and then you know, don't pay, you know, the second month's rent, third month's rent, or you trash the property and then don't put it back to its state that it should be in, you know, or basically you don't live up to your promise. You know, in the program, there's a thing, I think it's called the Magic 8. There's a video that basically, for me, highlights the sort of 8 key points why landlords should work with us. And you want to kind of just learn them. And every time you speak to a landlord, almost be reciting them off, because they're typically the problems that a landlord will face, and we're kind of solving them. But what you can't do is you can't you can't say you're going to do that and then obviously not do it, because that just breaks the trust straight away. And then you're going to get less deals, you'll get less referrals. And, you know, it takes so long to build trust that it takes like seconds to lose it. And you should always have that in the back of your mind when you're working with people in this game. And you'll go far if you're constantly working on it. So accreditations can help as well. And they probably come a bit further down the line in your journey, but you can, you know, even things like, you don't necessarily need it for service accommodation, but can't remember what the scheme's called again, the PS something scheme for landlords, all that sort of stuff. You can get them and you stick them on your website if you want, pay the annual memberships. But you don't need to, but it just, you know, can help in a way. I know I did it when I was first starting off, but I don't bother with it now. Again, testimonials, so client reviews, guest reviews, other landlords that might have already, you know, rented to you, reviews, estate agents that might have worked with you, any kind of reviews you can get. Again, post them on your profiles, get them up there, get them on your sort of mini websites. And, you know, it all goes hand in hand with just getting the deal done. This is all we do this to increase our conversion rates. So this is nothing more than really a sales tool, because people will, I guarantee you, nosy around your social media profile if they're looking to rent a property to you and they don't know who you are. They will have a look around and they'll have a look about. So you've got, they're not going to tell you they're doing it, but I guarantee you they do it. So relationships is kind of the next thing. So for me, your existing relationships, you will already have a lot of trust built up with, you know, and, you know, I know my first few investors came from my kind of friends and family pool, and, you know, and then you kind of build out from there. But in the main, most of my investors who I buy my assets with, they're all pretty much connected well before I had my property business. You know, they're all connected somehow and, you know, quite closely connected because we've already got that trust. And, you know, I see it quite often where people just put a post on Facebook like, oh, I'm looking for 100 grand. It's like, no one's going to come on a Facebook post and give you 100 grand. Like, they don't know who you are. They're never going to just give you 100 grand. So, you know, you've got to really work that relationship with kind of angel investors and people like that. And I think, you know, your existing relationships is definitely somewhere that you should start to look at and start to work through and figure out, you know, what you can leverage from it, how you can create win-win situations for you both. And I think that's another thing. A lot of people go into this game like with a me attitude. Like, I'm very much like, create a win-win, or even create a little bit of a loss for yourself, but a massive win for the landlord. When I say loss, I don't mean financially. I just mean like, it's maybe not 50-50, maybe it's 60 or 70% in their favor, but you're still getting something out of it that works for you. And you know, I think if you have that attitude, then you'll definitely pick up a lot more deals. Obviously, you want to then create new relationships as well. So as well as your existing ones that you can leverage, you want to start creating new relationships with new landlords. And a lot of the tools that we'll kind of go through towards the latter half of the presentation, it'll show you how to find these new landlords and find people that you've never met before, and then obviously start building and working on those relationships. I think the main thing is with everything that I've done and kind of the speed that I did it, especially at the beginning when I was sourcing myself, was I was just very consistent with the action. So, you know, I was making sure I was going on a certain amount of viewings every single week, opening a certain amount of conversations every single day. But also with the existing and new relationships, it wasn't just like one message, and then if I didn't get the answer I wanted, I just disappeared and went on to another one, which I think so many people do just generally in sales, never mind in property. But, you know, it's constantly just working at those relationships, and, you know, just constantly being, you know, asking if the property's rented, or you know, if they've got any other stock coming up, or, you know, just staying in touch with them, taking them for a coffee, going out for a chat, a beer, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just constantly working those relationships, and over time you'll start to get deals from those relationships. Obviously, you want to make sure that the relationships you're building are with the right avatars, with the right people, you know, and that they have property or they've got something that can benefit you. You know, obviously, if you want to have a social relationship with people, then that's a totally different ball game. What we're talking about here is like business relationships specific to growing your property businesses. So you want to make sure in the first instance that there is something there to to leverage, and then be working on that over time. And some will drop straight away, and some you've got to work on a lot longer. I know my mum was the hardest investor out of them all to crack. So although I had the trust and the relationship there from day one, she was well down the line before she went, all right, yeah, I like what you do, and I'll put a bit of money in because I'd like to retire a bit early. So you know, it's each person's different, and you've got to kind of treat them differently, and you've got to just keep nurturing each one depending on that kind of relationship. Nicola, yeah, do you have a question, buddy? Just come off mute whenever you've got a question, and
okay.
and just.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. So just talking about how, getting to viewings, right? I'm thinking, so is it fine to just go to viewings, as a normal person, right? Without having to disclose a massive amount about what I do beforehand, and then just, go there as, my name, right? And then once I'm there, then having the opportunity to explain exactly what I do, and then see if the letting agent, is willing to play ball, or do you have to do, I don't know, necessarily let them know in advance and make sure you don't waste anybody's time? What's the ratio?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of like the chicken and egg scenario. So I'll show you later on that I would not spend that much time with estate agents in this whole process. You're better off trying to find direct to landlords, and I'll show you how later on. But I personally feel like when I'm in person with somebody, I can come across a lot better and sort of make them feel a lot more comfortable about what I'm doing and explain it in a better way than I probably can over the phone. So I always found that for me, it was just get on the viewing. And, if I get on the viewing, then I reckon I've got a good chance of being able to turn them around, even if they're a bit objective to wanting to allow us to do short-term rentals. So it depends, I think, on you as a person. It also depends on, what your location is, where you're trying to search. At the end of the day, if you're in London and you're maybe thinking of, I don't know, going to say Stoke as your area, you don't want to rock up for one viewing and then it become a close the door because you haven't told me the truth. So again, it's like you just got to try and find the balance. I think when you get direct to landlords, when you're speaking to them, you can kind of gauge already whether they're open to it, not open to it. And I just find that you can then have a conversation around it. But again, all the like that whole trust element, the trust library that you're building up, that also comes into play in your script, in your manner, and what you're saying. So I genuinely, and I think this is probably why I've acquired so much property, is I genuinely believe that what we do offer is better than any tenant in the UK, because I'm going through it now. I'm just served a Section 21 on someone else, and they're trying to play funny bugger and won't leave and stop paying their rent and blah blah blah. And I got a bailiff to kick one out 2 months ago, which has been going on for the thick end of 2 years. It's like the tenants have got so many rights now, and I know they will say, well, you're a tenant, but a corporate tenant is very different to a residential tenant. And also, if we're making money out of these properties, why are we going to be difficult? Why we're not going to pay our rent? Why, we're going to typically have to spend money on these properties to get them up to a standard that is going to work as a business model, which means I'm going to enhance your property at no cost to yourself. So, they're just some of the sort of benefits that it just constantly reel off the tongue when I'm speaking with landlords. Not to mention the tax benefits and the income gains over the long term and all that sort of stuff. So I think each conversation you have is different, and I think in the main you've got to kind of work your own format out. Whether you are up front at the beginning, you say exactly what you're going to do, and then you might get fewer viewings, but the ones that you do go on have probably got more chance of success, or whether you literally just go on the view, and then when you're there, you weigh the situation up and try and explain what you do. So that's, and I think you'll find landlords, some instantly if they're up for it, and some you'll know if they're not. One great thing that you can do once you've got a few properties in the area, you can offer the landlord to go and actually look. So if you've got a landlord that's a bit cagey, then you say, well, listen, I'll give you the lockbox code. It's empty tomorrow. Just go in and have a look. And that's the condition of the properties that we keep them in. And I guarantee you, any landlord that goes in, they'll sign with you, because they walk into a property that's got nicely rolled towels on a bed, loads of little, consumables kicking around, and, the place looks mint. So they just go, well, yeah, why would I not want to rent to this person if they're going to do this with my property? Obviously, you need a few units under your belt before you can do that, but it is a good closing tool if you have ever got, a difficult landlord, or, even if a landlord's wanting references and things like that, you say, listen, I'll just give you the lockbox code to a couple of my properties. Just go and have a look around them. When you see fit, and it is a good closing tool for it. So, but yeah, it's with estate agents. I know, depending on where you are, quite often they send you a form. They want to know what your personal income is. They want to know what your job is and all this sort of stuff. Again, I think with estate agents, you're better off focusing on kind of the smaller outfits, the ones that are sort of run by the business owner. It's not like a big corporate and they've got franchises all over the UK, because they really don't give a shit. They just want to buy and sell property, and buy and rent property. Sorry, and that's they're just they're not very accommodating. Whereas the littler ones, who like every penny counts, they're much more open to, like, yeah, we'll speak to landlords on your behalf. Again, if you've built that relationship with them, if you've, echoed what you do and why it's going to benefit the landlord, why it's going to benefit them as an estate agent, and, and building that relationship, then you'll get deals off the estate agents over time. But I wouldn't focus too heavily on it. So I think in terms of where I would focus is, number one, your phone book. I guarantee you've probably got 20 properties minimum sat in your phone book that you could rent. So, for me, this is where my rent to rent journey started. I did a couple of deals early doors, and I noticed this lady kept booking through booking.com, which kept annoying me. So I rang her, and I was like, can you book through me direct? So I've noticed you've booked 2 of my properties now for the last few weeks. And then I got talking to her, and she was like, oh, we're actually up here on a contract for, I think it's about 8 months or something. And I've got like 16 other lads kicking around Newcastle, either in accommodation or hotels or whatever. So she was like, have you got anything else? So maybe me, I was like, yeah, I've got, more properties if you want, but I didn't. And then I knew that 16 people for 8 months, and the numbers that they were paying was decent money. So I just literally went into my phone book and just started texting people that I knew, just like, hey, just wondering if you've got property to rent. And got loads of responses back from it. And then they were like, why? What do you want it for? And I just explained. I was like, I've just spoke to this woman, and this is what I've been doing with a couple of my properties. I've been housing the contractors. She needs a property for this, that, and the other. I'll just rent it off you. I'll kit it all out. I'll furnish it, and I'll just pay you rent. And away we went. And I acquired, I think it was like 5 or 7 properties, like literally within that week, and got them set up within 2 weeks and fulfilled that contract. And, away we went. So for me, your phone book is probably your biggest asset right now. You just need to start leveraging it. Now, there'll also be, let's say, for example, you've got a friend that you probably haven't spoken to in 3 years, but fine well they've got property. You probably don't just want to drop in and be like all aggressive and like, hey, have you got a property I can rent from you? You might want to start there like, hey, how's it going? Haven't spoken to you for a long time. What you been up to? And, building that relationship a bit with them. But then there will be some people in your phone book who you can just literally text and say, have you got any property to rent? I've got a business idea. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I can maybe offer you, and just kind of getting into conversation there. So have a look through. I know I've got thousands of numbers in my phone book, just over the years, as you do, just collecting numbers. But you'll have a good idea in your head. If you've got a bit of paper out, just maybe write down 20 or 30 people that have got property, and that you could potentially drop them a message and start building a relationship with them. And that's for me normally the quickest way to get started, because those deals as well, you can also, I find direct to landlords the cheapest deals to get into. Like, I've never paid a deposit on any of my deals, and I'm glad I haven't, because if I had, I'd have like hundreds of thousands tied up in someone else's bank account or various other people's bank accounts. And because we keep these properties for such a long time, you know, then that's a lot of money that gets tied up. That is actual, you know, cash flow that you could be using to grow your business. Now, it's difficult to get that message across to somebody unless, you know, you've built the trust and you've got the relationship with them. But when you have that, it's easy to say, listen, we don't take deposit. Oh, I don't pay you a deposit because we actually take deposits from the guests so everything's covered. And, you know, worst case scenario, even if they do trash it, we've got their credit card details, or I'm going to have to put it back to how it was just so we can operate as a business again. So, and if the worst case scenario, I also say to them, you know, just get landlord's deposit insurance, which is about 29 quid or something. It's not that much, and they can kind of cover something. You can even offer to pay for it, and then at least you're keeping the money in your bank account, or the lump sum of money in your bank account, to be able to grow thereafter. Because once you get the deal sourcing going, it snowballs quite quickly, and you'll start doing a lot of setups, and then eventually people start running out of money because they've spent loads on furniture and, you know, first month's rents and things like that. But, you know, in the main, you can negotiate no deposit deals, and I always negotiate a 2 to 4 week setup period as well, which just buys you time to be able to get it furnished, get it set up, get it live on the booking channels before you're even paying any rent. What I'll do is I'll pay the rent so that they've got the confidence and they can give me the keys. But let's say if I've negotiated like a 2 week setup period, I'll pay rent number 1, get the keys, and then the next rent will be due in 6 weeks time rather than 4 weeks. So, and then it'll be 4 weeks every 4 weeks thereafter. So depending on what you agree, I kind of run it that way. I always agree a setup period. And the way to explain it as well, if you do get a bit of an arsey landlord on it, is, you know, if I don't know what day we are now, like the 11th of January. So let's say if I had a HMO tenant that wanted to move in, there's a good chance they're probably not going to want to move in till the 1st of next month, because they'll probably be living somewhere. They'll need to give 2 week notice on their place. So, but as a landlord, you'd happily sign an AST, take a deposit, and agree that they can move in on the 1st of next month. So effectively what we're doing is giving them a 3 week sort of setup period, because we're not going to rent that room out to anybody, or a house. It can be a house or whatever. It's the same principle. So what's the difference between us actually paying you everything up front and just asking for a couple of weeks to get it properly set up? And, you know, I haven't been doing this business for 8 years, but, you know, for the 4 years that I have been doing it, we have given a very, very small percentage of stock back. Now, the industry average worldwide is that you'll keep a rental arbitrage deal for about 8 years. So, you know, a landlord, if he's giving you 2 weeks rent free for a potential 8-year tenancy where he's going to get paid every single month for those 8 years, that sounds like not a bad trade-off to me. And again, it's just kind of explaining these advantages to the landlord, chucking a few statistics behind it, you know, and just again making them feel like they can trust you and that, you know, you are going to deliver on what you're saying. You know, then they go, well, yeah, you know, 2 weeks in 8 years, it's not that big of a deal really. And if that allows you to, you know, get yourself set up, and you know, I had a mentee a few years ago who, they had great properties in great locations down south, and in every month he seemed to be struggling, and then it all got on top of him. He's like, we're blowing fortunes and I don't understand why, because we're making money each month. And then I looked at it, and they were basically taking deals on, not agreeing any rent-free period or any setup period. They were paying, you know, decent amounts of money out, sort of 2 grand, 2.5 grand, 3.5 grand for these properties. And it was taking them 4 to 5 weeks to get them set up. So every single one of the properties, they were already on the back foot by probably 3 or 4 grand in terms of, you know, rent and deposits and what have you, never mind the furniture, before they even started generating any income. Whereas what I would be doing is, I almost like know that, okay, that we're going to do the deal. So like, say, what's the day? Wednesday. So if I agreed a deal today with a landlord, and I'd sort of say, all right, well, we'll kind of sign contracts maybe Friday or Monday next week. I'm already ordering furniture now. I'm already getting everything sorted. The team's at it, ready. So that when we actually sign the contract and get the keys on Monday and pay the first rent, we've got things going in there. We get set up within 48, 72 hours. And then we've got pretty much 10 days rent free where we will get bookings and bring money in the till. So we're almost like earning money before we've even paid anything out, really. And that just, again, just adds to the profitability. So it just shows you like the difference between the two models, where you like taking forever to set them up and you're paying everything from day one, versus trying to nick a few extra free days and getting it set up quickly, and you'll add so much more profit into your books over the course of all the setups that you do. So
So quick question, do you rent furniture, or do you always buy it yourself? And as a starter, should we consider leasing, just, not to have that, capital expense again at the beginning?
Yeah, good question. I did just buy initially. When I first started, I was on Facebook Marketplace. I was going picking bits and bobs up here, there, and everywhere. And then that became a bit of a hassle. So then I sort of just migrated to IKEA, and then just ended up with sort of cars full of IKEA furniture. And then we kind of put a mixture. Now I've got like a wholesale company now, and we just buy, blocks of furniture, sort of, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 grand's worth at a time, and just keep it in the warehouse. But that's kind of how it evolved. I got to a point where I did run out of money with all the setups. So I got a 0% credit card, and I just put it all on there. And then I paid that credit card down. So each property, however much it spent, had a monthly payment that I had to pay towards the credit card. And then over the 2 years, it went quite quickly and didn't even notice it. It was all fully paid off. So I've got a couple of lease agreements for furniture, but it's contracts that I've inherited, and they already had lease agreements on the furniture, so I took them over. It's personal preference. I mean, if you buy it for cash, once it's paid back, which you should be working at about a 6-month period, again, we'll cover this later on, but you're going to obviously then have more cash flow thereafter on a monthly basis. Whereas if you've got a financing agreement in place for, say, 3 years, obviously your net cash flow position is going to be less each month. So you kind of just weigh it up where you want to be, whether you can, are you going to get more properties? If you're on a real strong deal source and sort of momentum, and you've got loads of deals coming through, you might want to consider leasing, because then you can maximize the capital that you've got. The worst thing I think you want to do is lease furniture, but then have cash in the bank and it's sat there because you're not acquiring any other deals, whereas you could have just bought the furniture and then the operational profit would have paid it back. So you've got to kind of figure out what your cash position is, but then also figure out how quick you're sourcing deals as well, and then decide, I think, on whether you lease or not. But again, it's personal preference.
Cool. No, thanks.
The next place to find deals for me is social media and websites. So what I kind of mean by that is pretty much Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook groups with landlords in them. There's a lot of people advertise on Facebook Marketplace. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of scammers on there as well, but you can kind of identify who's who. And then Open Rent is a direct to landlord website. So that's where landlords will typically advertise their own properties. So if you see an Open Rent advert on Rightmove, or even on Open Rent, the website, you can contact the landlord direct. There's also spare room for HMO landlords. I think spare room has legs at times, where if you can identify, say, a HMO that's only got one room full out of maybe 5, and it's been only 1 out of 5 for quite some time, there's a good chance that landlord's going to be open to speaking to you about, taking the full property on and the guaranteed rent. So you can identify these sort of desperate landlords, I think, on spare room, or tired landlords. If you have a look at some of the properties and they're looking a bit tired, I know I picked up a lot of student stock in heating initially, especially when kind of all the students were kind of pushing into the town, into the new blocks, and the landlords that always had it away in heating all of a sudden didn't, and they had these big properties and they worked really well for us. So we did quite a few deals there, and they all kind of came from these sort of websites, social media, and just looking out for anybody advertising a property direct, because that means they don't want to go through estate agents and will be more likely open to any type of rental. And So for me, that they were great sources. Gumtree, I used to put adverts on Gumtree, like properties wanted and guaranteed rent, and you can put them in the properties wanted section. And sometimes I did used to get leads, and we still do get leads for every now and then when we do it. You're not going to get loads, but the ones who do, they are interested. And also, if you have a look on Gumtree and you find any properties advertised on there for rent or even for sale, you could speak to them and see if they would, potentially look at the lease option or something like that. Then they're typically, I think anyone advertising on Gumtree is pretty desperate. So you normally get some decent deals. Downside is there's normally something wrong with the property, and that's why they're probably on Gumtree. But it's always, I just think you should be scouring around these places all the time. The good thing with Facebook as well, because of the way the algorithms work, if you say go into a landlord's group and someone's advertising a property and you like comment on it, like, oh, I'm interested, I'll send you a DM or whatever, then Facebook thinks you're interested in that type of information shown on your feed. So what you'll see is your feed will start to become clogged with people advertising properties, which is kind of what you want. And then it makes your life a bit easier. And then you'll get shown stuff all the time of people who are advertising properties, and then you comment on. Now the reason you comment is if you see someone who has a property and you just go and send them a message on Facebook and you're not actually their friend, then it'll just go into their spam folder and they'll not actually see that message. Whereas if you actually comment on the post, hey, I've sent you a direct message, they'll know that the direct message is in their spam folder, so they'll go and looking for it and they'll find it and then they'll respond. You just increase your response rates by doing that. And again, it also helps Facebook algorithms to know that you're actually interested in stuff like that, so you'll then get more. You can also do things like I used to put out like a big purple image just saying, has anybody got I'm looking to rent a 3-bed in, and then just put a location. And what you'll get is it's quite often you might get landlords comment saying, oh, hey, I've got a 3-bed in that location or whatever. I'll send you a direct message. Again, it's just like fishing really. So you're just kind of dropping a hook in the water, and then whatever comes, whatever bites, you then just open a conversation with them and just kind of go through the, what you do and what you're looking to achieve. And, if they'd be open to it, can you get on a viewing? Can you meet? That sort of stuff. And it's just doing a bit of everything in volume. It's nothing, it's just a sales funnel at the end of the day. So we just got to throw a load in the top, and then slowly but surely stuff will kind of work its way down through at the bottom, and then you'll kind of end up with deals. Estate agents would be where I would spend the least amount of time. I've got very, very small percentage of our deals to estate agents, and I think a lot of people focus on estate agents because they've, got a lot of stock, but estate agents, they're not that engaged and wanting to help unless it's like an absolute home run for them and they don't have to do anything. But there are some estate agents that I think you could work with, but again, I think it's more of building that relationship and working with them. But I think in the main, estate agents, far too many people focus on that as a route and spend a lot of time trying to hammer it. Whereas I think if you actually just spend time on your phone book and your social media websites, I think you'll get a lot. Well, I know you will, because I've done it. You'll get a lot more results from that than you will banging the phones to estate agents. I'm not saying don't do that, but just maybe have, 10% of your time maybe going towards estate agents and then the rest towards the other two. And but I think in the main, one thing that a lot of people do is they just give up straight away. And for me, like any sales industry I've ever been in, like follow-up is key. So, just because someone doesn't want to rent to you today doesn't mean that they'll never rent. I always say to the sales staff, like, eventually everyone will buy. It's just, when. That's the bit we don't know. So, we've been, putting coaching courses out there now for quite some time, and you see, quite often people will comment and they'll download the free stuff and this, that, and the other, and then they never take action on the coaching program. And sometimes the lads get a bit, frustrated and what have you. And I say they will buy eventually, and sure enough, like a year down the line, a year and a half down the line, someone comes in that maybe was, engaging a year ago. And it's just, people just aren't always ready when you think they're ready. So, with landlords, they might put their property up for rent. It might be for whatever, 1,500 a month. And they think they can get 1,500, even though it's only worth 1,250. So they'll stick with that for a couple of weeks. They'll do some viewings. They'll get no offers, or you might offer on it, but you might say, listen, I can only give you 1,250, and this is the strategy that I want to run. I'm not interested. Okay, no problem. Now, most people would then just go and look for another deal. Now, you want to be doing that as well, but what you want to then do is set in a reminder in your phone or whatever, in a calendar or in a spreadsheet, however you organize yourself, to ring so-and-so landlord a week from now, or just drop them a text. So you just drop them a WhatsApp and just like, hey, it's Ryan. I met you last week in the property. Just wondering if you've rented it out. My offer still stands. I'm still looking for whatever 4 beds in Gateshead. I can give you 1,250 for it. Oh no, it's still on the market. I've reduced it slightly, but I'd rather find a tenant than obviously a corporate tenant. Blah blah blah. No bother. Just let us know if things change. Set another diary appointment for the next week, and you just every week or every couple of weeks just keep. I think for the first 4 weeks you go every week, and then maybe every 2 weeks for the next couple of months, and then after that maybe just monthly. So, the follow up is where you'll get it. Now, the more that landlord is experiencing void periods, the more inclined he's going to be to start just taking any offer that he's got. So if you're constantly there just chipping at his door, basically saying, I'm still here with my offer, if they don't rent their property within, probably 3 to 5 weeks, there's a good chance they'll start taking you up on your offer. Now, the problem is most people will just give up after about asking maybe once or twice if they're going to accept the offer. So if you just stay with it, if you stay with the follow-up with the lead, there's a very high chance that you'll end up with a hell of a lot more deals over time. And I was relentless with follow-up, and it's something that I kind of instill into the team now is just, don't always go looking for new leads, just work the leads that you've got, and you will get something out of them. Even if, the landlord says, no, I've rented that property. All right, great, no worries. Have you got anything else? No. Okay, well, that's, fine. I'll check in with you in 3 months, 6 months. Are you planning on buying anything? Oh, well, I might do this, that, and the other. Just diary a call for 6 months' time and just be like, hey, it was Ryan. I looked at your property, but you rented it out to somebody else. That tenant might have left by then. That property could be back on the market. They might have bought something else. So, they might have inherited a property. You just don't know. But if you just, again, this is kind of playing back into the kind of relationship element. So just when you meet a landlord, focus on building a relationship with them for the long term. Even if you don't get anything from them day one, just think, I will get something from them eventually if I stick with it. And you just got to constantly stick with it, but be creative in how you kind of contacting them. Don't just be pecking their head off all the time about the same thing. Just kind of, I just find out, just checking in, see if the property's still available, see if you've bought anything else that might suit is a sort of very, non-pushy type message that just penetrates and opens a conversation. Most people reply to it, and you kind of then have a bit of a conversation around it. So for me, I was going on like 20, 25 viewings a week for probably the first 6 months. And every single one of those viewings I was doing massive follow-up with. So I had a big funnel going at one point, and it was very consistent. And that's why I took so many deals on at the beginning, because it was just, constantly working with people and building relationships and getting deals over the line in different increments across the timeline from when we initially viewed them. So follow-up's key. When we come to analyzing deals, I know there's quite a lot of videos in the program, and most of them were probably shot quite a while ago, but I still think the manual checking of, going on Airbnb, having a look at what's around, having a look at average rates of what's being advertised, doing the same on booking.com, having a look at, what hotels are in the area, because I think hotels have got a very good guide on whether it will work or not. At the end of the day, hotels, especially your big chains, Holiday Inns, that sort of stuff, they do a lot of research before they'll even open a location to make sure that the footfall's there, people are traveling, all that sort of stuff. So I always think they're a good sign. But over the last few years, I have very much migrated towards AirDNA as a kind of source. And although it's, you know, you got to pay a subscription and it's not the cheapest thing in the world, I think starting off, you might get one location for 99 quid a month. I know obviously I'm on a bigger package than that, but we have multiple locations. But for me, I do think the data is fairly accurate. I tend to, you know, just use that nowadays as a quick guide. Whatever the projected revenue is annually, so let's say it's 20 grand. I always, if the rent's 50% or less of that annual revenue, I think it's worth then investigating further, and normally the numbers will stack up. Now that's just a total guide. I think you should always at the beginning still be fully stacking deals up and make sure you've got all your costs and everything in there. But for me, you know, a bit more experienced, I can say, you know, someone showed me a deal today here. It was 120,000 dirham projected revenue. They're like, what can we offer the landlord? I was like, I don't know, maybe 55 grand. And, you know, and that was the offer. Obviously he wants 80, so a bit away, but, you know, you then stack the deal up and sure enough, 55 brings out, you know, about 6,000-7,000 a year profit. So, it, you know, and that's kind of the numbers that you want. So, so AirDNA is a good tool. I do have a link for it if anyone wants it, so just give us a shout.
Yes, please, that'd be great. Yeah, the difficulty I'm having with the AirDNA is that obviously, yeah, you have to choose which area you get, right? And so I'm in the south, and so I'm around the Reading area, and so on one side, obviously, we get higher rents here, right? So that's, you know, kind of bring up your cost, but then of course you have slightly higher, you know, night rate as well. But some places also look very saturated, and I was thinking, I don't know, maybe the Midlands are a bit better, you know, maybe a little less how to say, organized market as well, a bit more landlords that decide to go on their own. I don't know if you have a point of view on that, if it's easier to just start around you regardless of the conditions, or maybe, you know, you better look elsewhere.
I would always, if I was you, start on your doorstep, and probably just grow on your doorstep. I think the saturation point of most markets is nowhere near what you probably think it is. You know, I don't know, you know, how many people travel through Reading or come to Reading or whatever, but I'd imagine it's a hell of a lot more than probably what you think. So, you know, we've been constantly building in sort of the Northeast since day one. And, you know, I remember after about 6 months, I was like, oh, I've got too many units in Newcastle now. I need to go somewhere else. But like, you know, we just constantly keep taking them on and we constantly keep filling them. So I think I wouldn't worry too much about saturation. I think you need to keep everything under control, especially at the start. So stuff on your doorstep's a lot easier to do that with. And then as you grow and get more experience, you might then want to, you know, push out a bit more and diversify a bit more. But you can look at, so on AirDNA, it does show you like, it gives you like in the overview, you can put in a city or a location and it'll tell you what the area's like. And you want to be trying to get like A and A plus grade areas, because that means like the rents or that means the ADRs are decent, the occupancy is decent, and typically that area works. I'm not saying that anything less than that doesn't work, but they're the type of areas. So if you're already in one of those areas, then you know, then it's a good starting point to then kick on with. But I know Reading does work. I know Reading works. So okay. It's a good area. I actually analyze deals with annual figures. I know a lot of people do them with monthlies. I think short-term rentals is a 12-month game, and you know, you have your seasons, and depending on your locations, depends on what your seasons are. But in the main, the UK has, you know, December and January are pretty much shit shows. It kind of bubbles back up a bit Feb and March, and then it kind of gets going April, May. June is decent. July and August are great. September is okay, and then it kind of peters back down again. And that's kind of how the season works. Obviously in Dubai, it's totally different. You know, it sort of picks up in November, lasts till about May, and then goes dead June, July, August. So, you know, it's a total different cycle, but understanding that the seasons exist mean that I look at my figures annually. So I'll say, right, the rent's, you know, whatever, 20 grand a year. We're going to make, you know, the projected revenue is 55 grand a year. You know, that's how I look at it. I don't really look at it on a month-to-month basis. I'm not saying don't, but for me, I look at it on a 12-month basis as opposed to a monthly basis, and kind of weigh all the costs up that way. So just something to consider when you are costing your stuff up. Every single person underestimates the costs of these things. So I would always add 10 or 20% to it. I can't remember who it was who put the spreadsheet in the other day, but, you know, just instantly looking at like utility cost estimates, council tax estimates, they were all like, you know, well under what you'll probably experience. So I always think you should, you know, add 10 or 20%. And again, with revenue, everybody always over eggs the revenue, because you want to almost like force a deal to make it fit. And that's the worst thing you can do. You know, you're better off just walking away from a deal if it doesn't fit and just finding another one, or negotiating a rent that does make it work. So always overestimate, always add or minus 10 or 20% on your figures, just to give you a bit of leeway. Same with AirDNA. You know, if I get AirDNA says, you know, it's going to do 100,000 revenue, I'll work off 85. I'll knock it down 15% and I'll work off that. And if it still works off that, great. That means if I do get what AirDNA is projecting, I'm going to be, you know, a lot more in profit than obviously I'm projecting. And even if at 85% I'm projecting profit at a reasonable level, then that deal for me is worth taking on. So then obviously we take it on. But you just gotta be. There's also like analysis paralysis and looking at these figures too in depth. Like, I don't think I've ever done a deal analysis on a property and it's worked out exactly how it was on the sheet. You know, I think things happen that you don't expect, and also you might, you know, get some really nice bookings that you can't really plan for either. So it's one of those industries where there's a lot of unknowns, even if you know, and you know, you just don't know if your cleaner's going to leave your heating on, and you know, the guest then comes in and whacks it up to 30 degrees for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you've got a 400 quid heating bill. You know, you can control these things as much as possible, but there's some things you just can't control. So, but in the main, you can work off averages, but just, you know, underestimating costs and overestimating revenue, just make sure you add a bit on or take a bit off, both of those when you're doing your figures. And if they still work after doing that, then I would say that's a good deal to take on. Does anyone have any questions around that? I mean, it's kind of, I just wanted to give a bit of a snapshot into where to start go hunting for deals tonight, because I think that's the main probably stage most people are at. For me, I think if you just get after the deal finding, and then what you probably want to start doing is just analyzing the deals. So in the in Kajabi, there is the deal analysis section, and it has got the calculator, and the video shows you how to use the calculator. I would definitely, for first maybe 10 or 20 deals that you go and see or you're looking at, just bang them on there and start putting the numbers in and just get used to kind of what things cost. Get used to, you know, what the sort of profit levels are looking like for a certain rent on a certain size. And after you do, you know, 10 or 15 deals, things will start to, you know, jump out at you in terms of data. And then you know that, okay, that area I need to be renting for around about £1,000 a month to make the deals work on a 2-bed. And then you can, it helps kind of narrow your search a bit as well, and decide what you want to go for. I think in the main, I mean, multi-units work incredibly well for what we do, but they are few and far between. And, you know, probably when you're at the start of your journey, you probably don't even think about them. But multi-unit stock sort of groups of flats, either converted from several houses or actually, purpose built. Or we're finding that larger houses actually work very well. Again, depends on where you're at, but the majority of the UK serviced accommodation model works on attracting contractors. You've got obviously your sweet spots of like Cotswolds, Lake District, things like that, where you're looking at more tourism, but the majority of the cities that most people are operating in will look to kind of get that contractor booking, and they typically like bigger stock now. So 4, 5, 6 bed houses are working very well for us at the minute, and bringing in some decent money each month. So that's kind of more where our focus is kind of on the larger stock or the multi-unit stock, and hotels as well, because we're kind of like automating these hotels and making them work as well. So again, that's just more of like a different version of multi-units. So that would be where I would focus. Now, sometimes I think, again, depending on where you are, taking a 4 or 5 bed house on, down south could be quite costly as a setup for your first few units. But 2 bed apartments work well. Studios and 1 beds. I'm not a massive fan of studios. I do think you compete with hotel rooms, but you end up paying a hell of a lot more for rent. And for me, the deals don't really stack. I think there are certain areas where it would, but I tend to stay away from them. I think 1 beds, 2 beds are fine. Ideally, you want 2 beds over 1 bed, but then if you can get your hands on some decent houses in the right locations, you also make more profit on the houses per month. So I think one thing that I definitely learned was I chased a lot of volume at the beginning, and I would take on kind of anything, and that probably wasn't the right thing to do, and pay the price for it with poor quality properties, which then became even poorer properties, and therefore there was more problems with them. Increased costs, more complaints from guests, reviews dipping, and ultimately just affecting the brand a bit. So we went through a bit of a cleaning up exercise the last sort of 18 months, and really got rid of a lot of stock that just wasn't fit for purpose, or just couldn't really get it up to brand standards. And you see the benefit of that is you don't always have to have loads of volume to make loads of money. You can have some of these bigger units might make £1,000, £1,200 net profit per month, whereas your little flats might only make you sort of 350, 400 quid a month. So you can say, well, I can effectively have, 1 property that's going to do 3 times the profit of one of those, littler ones. And they're just 3 different headaches. If I had to have 3, I've got 3 different guests. I've got, 3 different maintenance, 3 different lots of bills, etc. So I think kind of for me is it just focus more on like what makes the most profit, and then also set yourself a profit level. So okay, I want a minimum of £500 a month, say, for example, and if your calculator is dropping at 300s, 350s, 250s, you just say that their deal's no good for me, even though it's a deal and it will make money. It doesn't fit your parameters, so you don't take it on. And we're very much like that now with like brand standards. So it's like I've got a brand standard that I've put together, and all the acquisition guys and girls, they have to make sure that all the properties meet that standard, or we just don't take them on. And it's all right, you're potentially not making money, but at the same time, I think long term it's the best decision, because you end up in a better place long term than if you were to take them on, then deal with the headache 6 months down the line, 8 months down the line. So that's kind of where I would be focusing. Definitely start with your phone books, and I would imagine every single one of you will get some deals out of that. Everyone knows somebody that's got a property, or somebody that knows somebody that's got a property, and it's just a case of explaining what we're doing and how you do it and how you benefit them. I would encourage you to the Service Accommodation Accelerator program is probably the main program where the core content is. Just start top of that and just work your way through it. It kind of is in order of how your journey should really play out. So obviously, like systems and processes and setups of channels and things like that is further down in the program. The first few modules are very much about finding deals, marketing, you know, getting yourself out there on social media, make sure you set up properly on social media, and you know, how to speak to, you know, landlords, what the benefits are, all that sort of stuff. And if you get through them, then you should have a real good base knowledge. And then it's just a case of, how many viewings am I going to do a week? Okay, what activity do I need to do to get those viewings? To give you an idea, I think you need to open about 50 conversations a day. Now, what I mean by that is just, you know, jumping on maybe Facebook and, hey, is this property available, and having a bit of a conflab. If you want to do about 15 to 20 viewings a week, then that's the volume that I think you need to operate at. Again, it depends. You might, you know, I've got one of the franchisees that is, you know, doing well. He's just basically gone into his phone book. He knows some people who've got some great stock, and he's just contacted them. And, you know, he's only been on a few viewings, but he's got, you know, a hell of a lot of stock about to come on with, you know, various hotels and this and that and the other. So, you know, he's just been a bit more clever and a bit more direct with what he's doing, rather than going for the mass attack of kind of, I'll just speak to as many people as possible and see what falls out the bottom end. So you just got to kind of figure out where you're at and what you want to do, and kind of go from there, really. So is there any questions anyway on anything at all? It doesn't necessarily need to be on the topic. If anyone's got any questions about anything, just hop off mute and just speak away.
Yeah, I've got one. So because starting is the most difficult thing, I was considering using a sourcer, maybe to get, you know, the first 1 and 2 properties. At that point, you know, I can go and speak to lenders and say, I've got a track record, you know, I've done it before. Obviously, that costs more to set up. I think they're asking about £7,000 to set up, but the monthly sort of figures stack up. What's your point of view on that?
Well, I've never seen a deal source or put a deal across my desk that actually stacks up on the figures that they've put on the sheet. So what I would say is, at this minute in time, obviously you've got no experience in running a serviced accommodation business, and the majority of deal sources don't either. So they give you figures based on sort of data, because someone's shown them how to put a deal together, but they don't really know how to run it. So, you know, I had one the other week that had like £100 utilities on a 5-bed house. And it's like, you know, you've been living under a rock for the last 6 months because the utilities gone through the roof. But I personally would get stuck into the program, get the video content and the knowledge of how to source deals, and do it yourself. And you'll end up with better deals, more money in your back pocket. And, you know, these sources, by the time you add on that 3 and a bit grand fee, plus a furniture pack, you're looking at probably a 12 to 18 month payback before you even hit any profit. So you want to be trying to work around the sort of 6 or 7 month mark, whereby whatever you outlay for your setup, that's back in your bank by, you know, month 6 or 7. You know, if you work on £500-600 profit per month, and your costs 3.5 to 4 grand to set a place up, you're around that sort of region. But when you then chuck another 3 grand on for a sourcing fee, and the figures for me from deal sources, they just never seem to stack up. Very, very rare that they do stack up. Okay, thanks. Have you ever heard of opulent living? Yes, I have. Any point of view? I stay well clear from them. All right. Thanks. Yeah, we actually took some stock on from them in Sunderland that they couldn't manage, and we've had to deal with all the investors that they did these type of deals on, and let's just say the investors are well out of pocket and not very happy. So, yeah, no, I think listen, everyone's got their own business models, and everyone you know, does things in various ways. I'm not saying don't work with deal sources. Again, it just comes down to, you know, you want to flip the table on them a bit. Like, can you trust them? Are their figures correct? Is the deal what it says it is? Are they a reputable company? Have they got a track record? You know, you want to dig into all that before you give them any money. Never pay for anything up front. Do not pay a sourcing fee until you've got keys in your hands. And the majority of them you can negotiate down to about £1,000. Even though they've got that 3.5 grand fees. But at the same time, you know, if it works, I know one of my franchisees, Branka, she doesn't have that much time, so she does use a deal sourcer, but she's been using them for a while. The stock she's got's good. She knows how to analyze the figures, so she knows that, you know, she does her own figures, you know, and she knows how to put it all together. And if she's comfortable with the research that she's done, she'll then take them on and pay the fee. So I would encourage you to do that. If you do have any deals from deal sources, I'd be more than happy to, you know, give them a once over. Just ping them in the Slack channel, and I'll give you my opinion on them.
Thank you. Appreciate.
Steve, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, when you get your first property, do you just put it on Airbnb, or do you go across multiple sites and employ a channel manager booking company as well alongside that? Or are you just sticking on the first site you've got, you know, Airbnb, and then seeing where you go from there?
No, I would always put it like maximum exposure. I mean, I'm actually coming off Airbnb. I have for a portion of the portfolio already. I just don't like the way they operate and the new policies. But don't get me wrong, Airbnb, when you're first starting your business out, is a great tool because it gives you maximum exposure. And you typically will run your first property like absolutely by the book, because you've got time and you know you're dealing with the guests yourselves and things like that. But the bigger you get and the less control you've got on that element, it seems to be that the Airbnb, they almost don't like property hosts that have got hundreds of properties, because they want like the individual who's going to look after that guest. And so it's quite penalizing as a platform. But I would, so I use Uplisting as a channel manager. Again, I can give you a link for that if you do want to get a trial on that when you first set up and some discount. And that then you hook it up to Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, TripAdvisor. They're probably the main ones that you Google. They're probably the main ones that you'll get bookings from initially. You'll predominantly get Airbnb and Booking.com to start off with. But as time goes on and you start building your database and you start, you know, doing, you know, your own website and stuff like that, you'll then start to reduce your reliance on the OTAs. But I mean, it's taken me 4 years and, you know, hundreds of thousands of guests to get to about, I think we're about 67% direct booking now, month in, month out. And you know, very, very little reliance on the OTAs. But at the beginning, it was probably 55% Booking.com and 45% Airbnb or something like that. So yeah, so you just want to give it maximum exposure.
Just how many properties did you have before you started employing somebody, and then what did you employ them for, and how many hours? Three questions in there.
Yeah. So I don't know how many properties it was. I mean, I acquired 21 in the first 7 months, so I did go quite quickly. I remember it was probably around the 10 mark. It might be more, but what happened? I remember my phone went at 11:30 one night, and 4 pissed girls, and I had a flat down on the quayside, and they were like, "We can't get the lockbox to work." So I got out of bed, I went down, and sure enough, I got the lockbox to work. They were just pissed and they couldn't use it. So I literally like threw the keys at them, and then I just swore blind then. I was like, I'm not built for dealing with guests, so I'm not patient enough. And I think that's, you know, okay to accept that, you know, you certain people have got a character to kind of deal with that type of stuff. I definitely haven't. So I took a virtual assistant on who was from Newcastle, and I just bought a mobile phone. I just said, just answer that when it rings, and just bill us however many hours you're talking for. So that's kind of where I started. And she lasted about 6 months before I think she got sick of the guests. And obviously the portfolio kept growing, so she got more and more phone calls. But I would probably say around that kind of 10 mark. You probably could do it sooner. I think looking back, there was probably an element of, you know, the guest handling was kind of holding you back from getting out and finding deals and using that time in other ways. Plus burning energy and mental space with dealing with idiots day in, day out. But Again, like my strategy is different now as well. We don't really do any weekenders. We don't bother with that sort of market. So it's a lot easier to deal with. It's still, you still do have difficulties, but again, that comes from experience and testing things and looking at, the data and who's traveling and what have you. But I would, you could get like a virtual assistant for, whatever, 10, 15, 20 quid an hour, and maybe run a few hours a day at the start just to kind of get organized, make sure guests have got all their codes, they've uploaded their IDs, things like that. It's just a good practice to get into, I think, and start building that model out from the beginning.
Actually employed my daughter who is in marketing, and she's doing other stuff, on a day a week, and her setup and her processes have helped me massively already, and I think we've spoke before, I've got 9 properties already, but only one of them is a holiday letting serviced accommodation, and already me stepping back into that market with 9 properties, it's been a handful. It's been quite difficult, so the experience has been difficult. So employing somebody from my point of view for that is massively helped. And I think that's just the knowledge for the other people on the call as well. When did you set yours up, and did it help? And I've set mine up after 9, and yes, it's massively helped as well. Some of the organization stuff I just cannot deal with. Yeah, and I haven't got the knowledge. I haven't got the knowledge or even the will to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think, like, there's certain roles that you enjoy and there's certain roles you don't, and really you should try and not do the ones that you don't enjoy and do the ones that you do. It doesn't always kind of work like that, but I think in the beginning you can kind of employ one person and they kind of do a bit of everything. So, there might be a VA who does guest handling, but then they might help out with the accounts a bit, and they might also do a bit of running around for some furniture and what have you. But then I think as you grow, you want to try and keep people in certain segments, because if not, what I found was they end up like choosing the part of the job role that they like, and then just kind of using that as an excuse as to why they didn't do the job role that they didn't like. So, we've got it split now where we'll have like just people speaking to guests. We've got just people sorting maintenance and cleaning out. I've got just an accounts team, we've got just a marketing team, and you kind of got everyone just focused on their individual job role and responsibilities. But at the beginning, one person can, there was I probably had less than a handful of people for the first 2 years, maybe. I know we kind of went through COVID and I kind of got rid of people, but yeah, for the first 2 years, I probably only had like a handful of people, including me, even running, quite a lot of properties. I think one person can handle about 50 to 60 properties if they're efficient. Again, depending on the type of properties they are and stuff, but I do think one person can, if you've got good systems behind the scenes to be able to automate a lot of stuff. And that's what these channel managers do. They can automate instructions going out to guests. They can automate collecting their deposits and collecting their IDs and stuff like that. And it can just make your life a lot easier, where you're just checking stuff to make sure it's done rather than actually chasing people for stuff, which is very time consuming. Any more questions?
I've got a question. Yeah. I'm living in Glasgow, but would Edinburgh be a better place for doing service accommodations?
Again, I would jump on AirDNA, because you'll get 14-day free trial on it anyway. And if you just go to the overview section and put in both cities, it'll tell you what the data is. So it'll tell you what the average daily rates are. It'll tell you what average occupancies are. I would imagine both cities work. So again, jump on Airbnb, see how many people are operating in Glasgow, how many people are operating in Edinburgh. I like to see hundreds. If it's hundreds, that means it works. Well, if it works for somebody else, I believe that I can make it work for me. The only thing that obviously you do need to check in Scotland is obviously the licensing and the regulations. So a lot of them need change of use, which is fine. A lot of people seem to get put off by it, but we had to do one in Darlington. We had to change a bigger house into SUGEME status because of the way it was being operated. It cost about 400 quid, and we did it and away we went. So, that's all it is really. But you just need to check what license. I know there's certain areas in Edinburgh, like really in Edinburgh city centre, that are, you know, you do have to have a license, and you know, you want to make sure that you can get a license before obviously you start going paying rent to anyone. But in the main, if you live in Glasgow, I would probably say start in Glasgow. I'm pretty sure it'll work in Glasgow. I'm pretty sure there'll be contractors in Glasgow. There's definitely, you know, Stag and End who's going to Glasgow. I know that for a fact. So I would probably just start on your doorstep, and I think you'll probably be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions?
I've got one more. I'm like, what I do right now is my full-time job. I work away at sea, so I do 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off.
Yeah.
Like, could I still, is this still easily manageable? Just even if I'm not home for half the year, like I'm always.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably look to deploy a management company to actually run the back end of it. So I'd go and find the deals and then probably give them to a management company. A lot of people think that, you know, management companies, you're giving away, you know, whatever, 12%, 15%, 20%, whatever they charge. But as you build your businesses out, you will incur costs to run your properties. And especially if you give yourself an hourly rate, then, you know, you'll say, you know, even efficiently, I think it costs about 8 or 9% to run a department on the back end. So if you're paying someone 15%, all right, you're giving away an extra 6%, but then at least you've got peace of mind whilst you're away for 4 weeks. You know, and you know that there's going to be no issues. The other thing to do is obviously set it all up and make sure that you've got a VA or somebody who is, you know, operating the business whilst you are away and can handle, you know, the day-to-day. I'm pretty sure you can communicate backwards and forwards whilst you are away, but you're going to need somebody just to, you know, probably look after the day-to-day just in case you're busy or tied up and you've got a guest outside with a problem or something like that. But yeah, it's all doable. It's definitely doable.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Is this stuff downloadable? The like all the videos? If I'm going to be away,
no, they're not downloadable. But obviously, you can stream them on your phones. You can stream them on your phones. Yeah, but no, they're not downloadable. I don't think. No, I don't think they're not. So we'll do like a call like this every month, and then obviously just use the Slack channel as much as you can. Ask as many questions in there, but just get through the content as much as you can, and just get out on the ground. Just viewings, have a viewing target each week, even if you just start with a couple and then move it to 5, then move it to maybe 7 or whatever it looks like. The more viewings you go on, the more properties you'll acquire. It is as simple as that. It's just a numbers game. And also the more viewings you go on, the better your pitch will become, the better you'll, you know, more confident you become, and you'll do more and more deals. But if you need me, I'll be in Slack, and I'll let you know when the next live event will be online, and we can we'll just start covering off some other stuff as well. Alrighty.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, take care, everyone.
Right,
Have a good
care.
night. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.